Good evening and welcome to the Ben's Jewelers Workshop. Today this evening, we have a few pictures of a sign. For those of you who are sign collectors, a lot of them have clocks in them, and the clocks are not workable, so they need to be cleaned and serviced. And this is a typical motor that comes with a clock beer sign. The one we're looking at tonight is a Budwiser beer sign. And it's a pretty good size sign, as you can see the pictures. And the panel that I took this out of had the clock in it, and this motor and the mechanism, which is right here, wouldn't run. And what's happened is there's been grease, and they grease all these gears. And that grease gets like a sludge, it's sticky, almost a glue, and it bogs down the motor and it can't run. As a result, usually these motors burn out. But I checked this one, and I'll show you how to check it now. This motor is working, so it just means that we need to clean out these gears. Now, generally speaking, I use an ultrasonic cleaning machine, and that's what I will do after we're done with this demonstration. But for you at home who do not have ultrasonic cleaning machines and stuff, this can be done with cleaning swabs out of our clock cleaning kits. And quite easy to do, and there's not that many gears here, so you can, generally speaking, you should be able to remember how these come apart. But I would recommend you taking a picture or two, or maybe even three. So these little gears kind of get confusing, and they're frustrating once in a while because you can't quite remember how they went. But they only go one way. Anyway, this one was kind of neat because it just plugs into the clock, or the sign. It just plugs into the sign. And so I unplugged it, and the whole panel comes loose. There's 3 panels on that clock, or 2 panels, one large one with all the Budwiser signs, and then the clock panel, and it comes out separate. So this one is going to be fairly easy to work on, I hope. So first of all, this is the motor to it. So you want to take a pair of long nose pliers, and you want to pinch these 2 little tabs right here. Just squeeze them enough so that you can pry the top off. So you don't want to go in too far, because these have to go back out in order to hold this. This is a heat sink cap is what this is. And it has to be in there. So you just squeeze a little dab. I like that. A little dab. Take that. Take your little plier there. Well, this is not the right tool for that. That's my pointer, but it's actually a solder pick. Aha. Now this comes off. There you go. And this is a heat sink in here. And the heat radiates back out of here. And if you don't have that on there, then your motor will fry. So generally speaking, these shafts are just full of old caked on grease, and they have to come out. So the way you do that is you just come underneath this wheel with a little screwdriver, and you can pull the shaft. See the shaft come out of there? Now, this one had already been cleaned, but I wanted to show you how to do that. So then you put this is the only piece that I really oil, and I don't use grease on this, although you could. So we could use the Red Dragon sticky grease. But let me see if I can find an oiler. It wasn't quite Now you have to be careful that you don't mess up this wheel here. because it's not fixable. It's a little hard wheel that's made for there's a little washer here, which I forgot to tell you about, that has to sit in right in here. So we just want to put a little oil right in there. Right. And this, we'll dip this in some cleaning solution, and we'll make sure it's clean. Now this is just mineral spirits. Clock solution is so expensive, and mineral spirits works fine. So all I'm doing is just cleaning the gear teeth out, and immediately you can tell that we can probably sneak in here a little bit. There we go. And we're just cleaning out these little spokes in the gears. Make sure they're nice and clean. Alright. Now here's a little trick. You just take and roll that around it. And not quite so far up. There we go. That's cleaned. Now let's get a little bit further out here so you can see what's going on. Next, we've got oil inside of here, so we're going to come back out and we're going to put this little shaft back in and put this little washer back on. That's just a spacer. And see that spin? Now it's nice and clean. And we're not going to slug down a little bit. That motor could barely move when I plugged this in. In fact, it didn't. It just growled. Anyway, that's how that's done. Now you got the clock cleaned. And we're ready to get back to cleaning the rest of the clock. Okay, now you want to use a pretty hefty screwdriver, and you want to come in here where these tabs are, and we want to bend them back out. So be careful you don't slip and tear your hand up. Okay. Now, I want to make sure we didn't screw up here. Beautiful. Now we got the motor fixed. So the next thing we want to do is clean this clutch gear. All that does is lets you it's a intermediate gear. And we want to get that clean. And we want to clean out these 3 holes here because those are where your pivots go. Those are your pivots. That's where your gear's set into. Alright. Clean. As good as it would need to be if you're doing this at home and you don't have an ultrasonic cleaning machine. And $70 worth of cleaning solution. I think a gallon of liquid clock solution, not the water added solution. I don't like that water added solution. It doesn't clean that well, and it has a tendency to rust up your parts. So I use a clock cleaning solution, which is I think this about $55 a gallon, 60, and by the time you get freight in here, it's $75. So that's why I recommend mineral spirits, which basically that's all that is mineral spirits and a couple of cleaning chemicals that are inside that clock solution. And it's not ammonia either, by the way. So this little motor is ready to rock. We can see that spin see that spin? That's free and clean now. So we won't mess with that again. Now, we got to get the rest of this cleaned up too. These gears are all sticky. And we're going to use a little solution and put them in there. We'll let that soak for just a second. And that's just plain old mineral spirits. And we'll use our little cleaning swabs and clean these all up. Now, you just roll your stick all around it. Now, you just gently roll that around. The last thing you want to do is bend one of those little plastic teeth and ruin your clock. All I'm doing is just getting the grease out of those little cog gears. Now you can point it into your little cleaning swabs. You just go in here and clean out these little gears, just in between the teeth. So once you've got that done, that's pretty clean. See the crud right here? Right there. Just use your pointed stick. And boy, there it comes loose. Alright. Now you just do each and every one of those. Yeah. Now, let's just hold on to this. Here's your center shaft. This is the hour wheel. This is your minute wheel, minute hand. And there'll be 2 gears in between this gear and 2 gears between this gear and 1 gear in between those. Now, if you understood any of that, take a picture. Use your cell phone and take a couple of good pictures. So. But you can see this sticky stuff here. See how that's kind of coming off there with your mineral spirits? That's just exactly what you want. And amazingly, I think this little movement will work. It doesn't look all that bad. The pivots on these little plastic pivots, usually these are wore out, and you just got to find a new motor for them. But this is kind of ideal because this one here I think will actually work. So, alright, we can take the shaft and push it up. See how these gears come up? Now watch this little fellow down here. It has to come up too. Out it goes. Let's pull these 2 out. Let's pull the center gear out. This one looks pretty clean, so we probably won't have to do too much to it. Now I'm just dipping. All I'm doing is got a little mineral spirits in a cup, plastic cup. This used to be a little country crock butter, and my mother saved these for me over the years, and I probably have 50 of these. That they sure come in handy for parts and stuff, and it's a nice way to clean your clock. So just patiently is all it takes, is a little patience. You can see the brown leaving. That's that grease. This is your directional wheel. This stops it from going in the wrong direction. Since the motor doesn't know which way to go, this helps stop it. And you just don't want to play with that because it's on a thread. So I'm just holding it so I don't break anything. Alright. I'll just let that dry. These two pieces are done. This one here just looks like the inner side here needs to be cleaned. And that stick's about done for. So we'll throw it away. And we'll just run this around it. Kind of a neat little trick. See how it's pulling all the grease, junk out of there? Yeah, that one's cleaned. So the only two we got left is these. Alright, all those pieces are clean. So, we need another clean swab here. Dip it in some, all I'm doing is just dip it in, darn it, dip it in the solution here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to clean these pivot holes out. Now this one doesn't have anything going in it, but it's still plenty dirty. So we'll just get all that crud out of there. Alright. Next thing to do is put this back together, but we're going to let that dry for just a few seconds and we'll get back to you. Alrighty. Now we've got all the gears pretty well cleaned and time to do the grease and what little oil we're going to need. Well, I'm not having very good luck there, am I? Alright, so, alright, now, I'm just using the back of one of our cleaning swabs, and it's pointed, so it works real nice because we just want a little tiny little bit of grease, and we're just going to put it in this hole here just a little bit on the center gear, and this is going to come down and touch right there. Now before we get too far, we've got another little gear that has to sit in here, and we're just going to put a little bit in there. maybe a little bit more than that. This is special red dragging sticky grease, and it is specially designed for clocks. So now, oops, let me just get us a gear here. Now that's set down that little plastic shaft, and you probably can't see it, but it sits right down here. And I tell you what, I don't like that. I don't want any grease in here. Took a little grease out of there, but nothing goes here. But I want that grease out of there because I don't want it heating up and getting contaminating our good stuff here. Alrighty. Now we got this little gear here and this little gear here. And that's not the right way. As you can see, it's too wide here. So I did that on purpose. Gotta throw you off a little bit. Now we're just gonna put a little tiny bit right here and right there. And we'll turn it over. And there we go. Now I'm going to put just a smidge on these pivots. And I believe this goes in there like that. Now we want to put a little dab of grease. You like that word, a little dab? Just a smidge. Right here. And a little on this gear. Put a little dab on there. Alright. Now, all of our gears are back where they're supposed to be, with the exception of this little intermediate gear, which is used to allow the minute hand to be turned on the clock from the front instead of an actual turning knob. This is just an intermediate gear that lets that happen. Now that has to go right here on this, and it goes right there. So we'll get a little grease in there. Now there's a couple holes here we want to try and put just a little bit. Make sure you can see that. I put a little grease right here. A little grease right here. And a little bit of grease right here. I'm just going to take my finger and wipe a little of that off. And that's all we're going to need with the sticky grease. See which side this goes on. I'm thinking it goes on just like that. Now, this gear intertwines with this gear. These three pivots have to line up with these three here. So, you just want to come straight down. This could get a little tricky. Those 3 gears have to line up in those pivot holes. And you can see we're not clear in, see? So we got to kind of work this around a little bit until it drops in there. Well, it'd be nice if I put it on right in the first place. Okay, one gear. This might help just a little bit. Sorry, I had this on backwards. Okay. We're snapped right in. So the next thing I'm going to do is put a couple screws back in this, here and here. See if I can get this back into where you can see it. I apologize if my fingers are in the way, but it's really hard to try and do everything with one hand. So I'll put a screw right in there, and I'll put probably one right here. And I'll make very sure that this is down in the pivots are in there, which they are. And we'll go plug it back in, and we'll see if the minute hand moves. If it does, we're in like flint. We'll put it back together, and you've had another lesson on how to clean clocks at the My Bench Jewelers workshop. Okay, I call this a job well done. Now, in between the times, I did take this to the ultrasonic cleaner and re-cleaned everything, but I re-oiled or re-greased it exactly the same way that I showed you how to clean and grease your little movements. So I plugged this in. It just has a little plug on it, and I ran it for I think about half an hour or so. Watch the minute hand go around. So I know it's going to connect right in the stop bar that goes in there. See, when these motors kick on, they don't know which direction to go. And that little stump that you saw in there will go one way, hit, and then it'll force it to go the right way. Anyway, that's how these work. So now all I got to do is the hands were pretty well damaged when he brought it in, but I've got it pretty well fixed, and might have to do a little bit of touch up, but the only way you can fix these hands is to respray them, and it adds a lot of weight to your hand, so I don't like to do that. I just leave them alone, and if he wants to do it, why, you know, more well to him. So. But this little clock is running beautiful, and we'll put him back together and put him in the case and get him back to the customer. So I hope you enjoyed this little clock review, and happy clock hunting.